The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get stinko.
From Unnamed Bar and Grill in Roseville, Minnesota.
Yeah.
This is the Giles and the Goalie podcast. I am Giles Farrell. Across the table from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Ben, it's good to be back at our home establishment. My home.
It is. I had no idea they had such a good breakfast pizza that was the size of a manhole cover.
Well, I think Roz would disagree with you on that breakfast pizza take.
Oh, well, you know.
As was discussed.
Sorry, there aren't any Casey's nearby, so this is the best we can do.
We'll have to have a breakfast pizza contest. Casey's, Hedges, and here. And see what takes the cake.
Tastings.
We are the leading breakfast pizza connoisseur podcast.
We can add that to our title, too. Everyone likes food discussions on podcasts.
We should just put that on our card. We should make some cards.
Jerseys, soup,
yeah,
breakfast pizza.
Yep. Anything but hockey.
Right.
No, it's good to be back. We've got a great show for you in store. We've got Dane Mizutani of the St. Paul Pioneer Press for you later in the broadcast. So you can look forward to that.
I'm probably just going to keep pronouncing it Mizutani. Because it's Mizutani?
Mizutani. That's what he said, so I will take his word for it.
No, I mean, yeah, we heard it straight from him, but I don't know why that's hard for me to, like, grasp, because I've just been calling him Mizutani for the last year and a half plus.
Yeah,
so, whatever.
I mean, anyway. Quick note before we dive into the show. Again, on March 31st at Tin Whiskers Brewery, Ben and I are throwing a Minnesota Wild watch party at the St. Paul Brewery.
Mm-hmm.
That is 7 p.m. for the Minnesota Wild Dallas Stars game, which could be very crucial to playoff positioning. So we do encourage everyone to come on out and check that. It should be a lot of fun. We've podcasted many times before at Tin Whiskers.
Yes.
It is always a good time. They have good beer, so do come on out if you are on the fence.
Yes.
They will certainly not let you down. They have not let us down.
No.
So
delicious beer.
Do check that out on our Facebook page. So, Ben, I have a grind the gears.
Excellent.
To lead into this show, and you will probably enjoy it because it's a Minnesota Vikings related
yes.
grinding of the gears.
I love it.
As you may have heard this week, and if you didn't, you pretty much live under a rock.
Right.
And for that, we salute you.
Yes.
But the Minnesota Vikings signed quarterback Kirk Cousins to a contract, and he is being anointed as essentially the savior of this beleaguered franchise that has had a Super Bowl escape them for 50-some-odd years now. And I'm not one to buy the Kirk Cousins hype, but I hope I'm wrong as a pained Vikings fan.
Yeah.
But what really bothered me this week was the round-the-clock coverage on Kirk Cousins and what he was doing. The video of Kirk Cousins getting off the airplane with his wife surfaced. Video of Kirk Cousins opening the door for his wife at noted downtown restaurant has surfaced.
Grill.
And
yeah.
Do we really need this kind of round-the-clock coverage on Kirk Cousins? You know, you got all the cameras and reporters hanging out of the restaurant they were at downtown as they were trying to make their pitch to him, which obviously was successful. And they show Mike Zimmer walking out of the restaurant, and it's like Mike Zimmer hates talking to the media when he has to during the week for his normal press conferences. What makes you people think he's going to want to say anything to you as he walks out of the restaurant? I was disappointed nobody asked him what he had for dinner.
Right.
Like, that seemed like a more interesting question to me than, like, what was talked about. Like, it's just football jargon. Like, who cares? Why?
And Capitol Grill is amazing. We had dinner there with some friends a couple of weeks ago, and it was fantastic. Fantastically expensive, but it was also fantastic.
Well, I think the Vikings could afford that tab.
Yeah, I probably picked it up.
But I just... Do we really need this much Kirk Cousins coverage? Like, I get it. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, working for a website, you need to do things that get you clicks, essentially. And
Right.
Kirk Cousins, obviously, and the Vikings will bring you said clicks, as
Right.
our football guy, Arif Hassan, just generates an insane amount of views on our website.
Right.
And I get that part.
But he does that through good content.
Right.
You know, like actual content.
Is it necessary to have video of Kirk Cousins walking into a restaurant? Like, do people really eat this up that much? Like, am I just out on the fringe part of a Vikings fandom that
I think so.
I don't care for that kind of stuff?
That kind of stuff is one of the many reasons why I hate the Vikings, because they're just so overexposed in this market. Like, it's just that's all that people want to hear about, and it's just like I get it. We just signed the biggest quarterback contract in history here, but I don't. It just it's a bit much, and the whole. I mean, that's NFL coverage in a nutshell. That's not just here. That's NFL. Remember Brett Favre landing? They had like an OJ style chopper following the truck to Winter Park. Like, it was literally like watching the OJ chase, and it was just like this just seems like a bit much.
That was Brett Favre too, so like,
that's a good point.
I get
Kirk
that a little bit.
Which is,
like, Kirk Cousins is, to me, he's kind of underwhelming, and
yeah,
like I said, like, he seems like a very likable guy, and I hope I'm wrong as a Vikings fan who begrudgingly admits that fact, but they continue to suck me in, much like everyone else in this bloody state. So I get you want to have coverage on Kirk Cousins, but showing everyone coming in and out of the restaurant or getting off an airplane or whatever is like, why? Like, I was just waiting for a Kirk Cousins bathroom update. 9:52 p.m. Kirk Cousins had to go take a crap after eating dinner at the Capitol Grill. No, just stop. And
but on the bright side, it does kind of calm. Like, it was just the excitement initially, I think, and so the bright side of this is that it does eventually calm down, and hopefully we're not hearing like updates on Kirk Cousins life throughout the summer, but I get the feeling that we just might. So
I will say this about the Kirk Cousins coverage / signing, was that it took away from an incredibly awful Minnesota Wild defeat to the Colorado Avalanche on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Man, am I good at segues. To recap, the past week for the Minnesota Wild, as mentioned, they lose in a painful 5-1 fashion to the Colorado Avalanche at XL Energy Center.
Yeah.
The very good home team, the Minnesota Wild, lose 5-1 at home. That might be their worst home defeat of the season.
Well, lucky that was an NBCSN game. Otherwise, I don't think Pants and company would have been able to figure out how this team lost at home.
Yeah, that would have been something to see. But
would have been baffling beyond words.
JT Compher scored, Nikita Zadorov scored, McKinnon, and then Compher again, and Tyson Jost are your goal scorers for Colorado.
Yeah.
As I pointed out in the post-game recap, which was a very popular post-game recap, the game was pretty much won and lost with Devin Dubnyk, and he was straight up awful on Tuesday night, and I did not hold back on saying so. And the McKinnon goal was perhaps the most noted example of how bad Dubnyk was Tuesday night. 11 seconds into the period, and a puck pretty much goes right through his legs.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a stoppable puck.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where you're at as resident goalie expert on this podcast.
I actually didn't get to see any of that game. I just saw it, just kind of followed along on Twitter and stuff as I was working on the West Coast. But, Dubnik's going to have games like that. He's kind of streaky like that. And, I think he bounced back rather well in Arizona. But he hasn't been able to find that groove that he has gotten in previous seasons where he reels off just a month straight of incredible hockey. And, as discouraging as that's been this season, I guess the only hope remaining is that he's able to do that during the postseason, because we've seen him at the top of his game. We've seen him throw up entire months of 950, around 950 save percentage, which is nuts. So I guess, it's easy to be pessimistic about it, and it's hard to hope that happens during the playoffs, but that's kind of the only routes we have right now.
Well, they had a couple of days off, and then they got to travel to lovely Las Vegas, Nevada, for their first ever trip to T-Mobile Arena to play the Vegas Golden Knights. And Bruce Boudreau came out before the game, and this caught me completely off guard by saying Alex Stalock's going to start tonight and Dubnyk will start Saturday against Arizona. I thought it was going to be the other way around. Bruce Boudreau chalked it up to Stalock not being good against the Coyotes, which he's partially right. His last start against the Coyotes was not good, but as Michael Russo pointed out in The Athletic, on Saturday night, that was pretty much Devan Dubnyk being awful on Tuesday was why Alex Stalock started on Friday. Boudreau sending a message to Devan Dubnyk. If you're not going to play where we need you to play, then, you're going to get this kind of start compared to starting the first ever game in Las Vegas.
It's a back-to-back, too. So it's like, they were probably going to split it anyway. You might as well go with the guy who, didn't stink up the joint on Tuesday night. And like you said, had a rough start against Arizona, so you want, they needed to stop the bleeding as far as losing to the damn Coyotes. So you go with the guy who's better against the Coyotes. So it made sense, and I think like I said, the message was probably received because Dubnyk looked pretty good. So
in that first ever trip to T-Mobile Arena, Minnesota Wild complete a season sweep of the Golden Knights, the only team to not lose a game to the Vegas Golden Knights this season. They went 4-2. Hometown boy Jason Zucker scores the opening goal. Charlie Coyle, the big omelet, Matt Dumba, and Zach Parise are your goal scorers for the Minnesota Wild.
Yep.
In this win, the Golden Knights did cut it to a 3-2 hockey game with goals from Ryan Carpenter and Eric Holla before Parise put the empty netter in to seal the win for the Minnesota Wild. But for as much as we've heard about teams suffering from Vegas flu this season, the Wild going into Vegas and pretty much kind of dominating this hockey game until really late in the game was a very encouraging sign. And the fact that they simply did not succumb to the Vegas flu like all other teams have this season was also another encouraging sign.
Yeah, it was good to see that because so many teams, really good teams, have gone into Vegas and have not fared very well. And this team being as notoriously bad as they are on the road, you would think they're primed for that, even if they have beat the Knights twice at home. But no, it was good to say. It was a good sign to see that they not only won that game, but as you said, they kind of controlled that game. I mean, they, score effects are what score effects are, and late in the game, obviously, Vegas came back as the Wild, turtled just a little bit, but they got it done at the end, and that's certainly encouraging against a team that could end up being a playoff matchup.
Then to close out the week, the Wild were right back at it the next night on Saturday night. They went back to the desert to finish out their season series with the Arizona Coyotes, a team that had beaten the Wild in their first two meetings of the season. And the Wild were able to take care of business this time, winning 3-1 over the Coyotes. Coyotes make a late push, but they cannot beat Devan Dubnyk, who makes 30 saves in this contest, looking very sharp.
Yep.
Just from my watchful eyes, again, I will not say I'm the goalie expert of this podcast by any means, but just to me, Dubnyk looked a little more sharp, more on his angles, more confident in himself on Saturday, and especially compared to Tuesday when, just firing any puck seemingly had a chance to go in the net. And I will say the Wild giving up a lot of 2-on-nones to the Coyotes in this game was frightful, but Dubnyk was able to make the saves except for the one that got by him on a Clayton Keller goal.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you can't complain, especially on the second leg of a back-to-back when the Wild are known to be a little gassed. Just getting any kind of points as a bonus, and they got 2. So it's all roses in front of the packed house in Glendale.
Yeah, I talked about this last night in the video recap that it was 3 kind of big things that they won on the road, 2 on the second night of a back-to-back, which they've kind of, been known to have dead legs. They looked decent. I mean, even to start the game, it's always kind of a feeling out process, but they weren't getting the floor mopped with them to start the game, which has been kind of a common theme in their back-to-backs. And 3 was against a team that, sure they had been kind of snake-bitten by, but a team that they should have beaten. And as you wrote about this week on Zone Coverage, they haven't done a good job of beating teams that they should beat. So they kind of hit the trifecta last night of on the road, on a back-to-back, and a team that they really should handle, quite easily, and they did. And so I think it's encouraging. I'm still not anointing this team any kind of, playoff contender just yet because we haven't seen them string together any kind of consistency this season. But it's certainly a good sign when they can kind of, vanquish at least a couple of issues that they've had so far.
Eric Stahl, with an empty net goal against the Coyotes, now tied for second in Minnesota Wild history with 38 goals in a season, tying Marian Gaborik 38 goals in the 05-06 post-lockout season, only trailing Gaborik's 42 goals of the 2007-08 season for most goals in Minnesota Wild history. Just a notable fact there is you don't think of Eric Stahl as a big goal scorer, but he is on the doorstep of tying and or breaking a franchise record that you might not have thought would be broken until the Wild actually draft another goal scorer.
Right.
Which, Lord knows when that'll happen.
And we talked about this with Dane. Spoiler alert, he talked about the Wild not having a sniper, and Gaborik certainly was. I actually can tell you firsthand, Gaborik shot on me in a practice once randomly. And, of course, he scored. But Stahl isn't really that guy. Stahl isn't a sniper type. He's got a good shot, don't get me wrong. He's an NHL, he's kind of an all-star type NHL player, so he's got a good shot, but what he's excelled at is being at the right place at the right time, and he's also, done really well with setting up plays and kind of doing the work, around getting the puck moved around to setting up things for himself. So he's doing it in a totally different way than Marian Gaborik, who Marian Gaborik was just basically blazing speed and a quick snapshot. But Eric Stahl has done it more, with positioning and with, being in the right place and using his big frame in front of the net.
And he seems to score in just about any different way.
Right.
Like, he can make an occasional snipe from the circle and
Sure.
But like you said, he's also been, grinding it out in front of the net, picking up the loose trash. And
Yep.
Such a good season. We can talk about this literally every week, how great of a season it's been. But when you start to see him eclipse these records in the record book that we thought might not be broken for quite some time still,
Right.
is quite something. So that is the week in review. I'm not surprised the Wild won 2 out of 3. I'm a little surprised how they did it.
Yeah.
But you got to be pleased when you're getting 4 out of 6 points consistently in the week. And as we sit here on March 18, as we record, the Minnesota Wild sit third in the Western Conference Central Division, behind the Nashville Predators, 104 points, the Winnipeg Jets, 94 points. The Wild at 89 points, 5 points up on the Avalanche and Dallas Stars for wild card spots. And after the the Avalanche game, the Wild were only 3 points clear of the Avalanche and Stars. And it was kind of looking like maybe they could get surpassed, but these last 2 wins have kind of solidified their spot in third and looking more and more like a Winnipeg playoff series is inevitable. But
kind of, yeah.
They do have quite a rough schedule to end the season, and we'll get into that here in a few minutes. But I guess you can't complain with where they're at in the standings. And
no, I mean, the playoffs at this point, it's getting to the point where their playoffs are all but assured. I mean, it would really take a swoon to end the season. I mean, we've got 10 games left. It would really take them losing the 7 out of 10 that qualifies as a swoon for them to miss to play up the playoffs.
It would take a Gophers quite type of luck
for
them to not get in the playoffs at this point.
1.8% chance
too soon
hitting on that.
Some newsworthy things here in the week. Tuesday night's game was quite awful in more ways than one for the Minnesota Wild.
Yes.
Jason Zucker left the game the first period with an injury, but he did return in the second period and has been seemingly fine since. However, Jared Spurgeon left the game in I believe it was the second period, and did not come back. He is going to be out for at least 4 weeks, the end of the regular season, with a partial hamstring tear. Ryan Murphy was recalled from Iowa to help try to replace Jared Spurgeon, but realistically, there's no replacing Jared Spurgeon, and it was a little bit more doom and gloom considering that came after Tuesday's game against Colorado, and the Wild were maybe even looking at not even slipping into a wild card spot at that point with just how kind of doom and gloom it was.
Yeah, and I think the only positive that I can see coming from this, which is a decent positive, is that a lot of us have been pining for Ryan Murphy to be on the third pairing anyway. And so I'm hoping that the silver lining to this Spurgeon injury is that the Wild still make the playoffs. He's still back for the playoffs. Or maybe he can come back for the last regular season game, kind of shake the rust off. And that Murphy outplays Prosser, which should not be difficult. And then when Spurgeon is back, Murphy ends up on the third line and Prosser ends up in the James Shepard Memorial press box. That's
hoping for a lot.
Yeah, that's the only silver lining that I can see out of this is that they've kind of done a good job of keeping their head above water in the playoff run. They should make the playoffs even without Spurgeon, barring a catastrophe. And hopefully he's back in time for the playoffs. Whether he's going to be 100% for the playoffs is another story, but I think with his game as smooth and as kind of controlled as he plays, he could probably be still a really good player for this team under 100%, kind of like how we're seeing out of Nino Niederreiter. But that remains to be seen.
The other newsworthy thing here out of the week is Wild signed Louis Belpedio to a amateur tryout after he finished his season with Miami, Ohio. They lost to the St. Cloud State Huskies in the first round of the NCHC playoffs. They actually took it to a third game in overtime, which was quite something, as St. Cloud State is now the top seed in the NCAA tournament. So that was quite a thing for them to take it to the third game and in overtime. But the Wild are able to get Belpedio signed to a tryout. A 2-year deal hasn't been done yet.
But you got to think it will be.
But basically they're getting him to Iowa to get some playing time, and then they'll kind of see where he goes next season. But he's a right-handed shot defenseman, and that's something they badly need down the pipeline. And it was concerning because there had been relatively no news on him, whether he would sign or not. And then they finally do get him pretty quietly signed here in the last week.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and also in related news, BU won their tournament. I don't think they were going to be a playoff team otherwise, So
No,
that
that
further
hurt another team.
Yeah. So not only did that crush the souls of some Golden Gopher fans, but also we get the double whammy where Jordan Greenway is not available to be signed for at least another week plus, if not longer, if they somehow manage to make it out of their regional, which is probably unlikely. But
I mean, if they make it to the Frozen Four, then that's a pretty slam dunk signing when the Frozen Four is done, because he'll already be in St. Paul.
right, they just want to stop him as he leaves the building.
Yeah, like he won't be going on the plane back to Boston.
Said he has to drive to Iowa. Ugh.
I mean, he can commute with me.
Yeah, he can.
I'll
Can
take
hitch
him
a ride
down.
with Giles, take him down to Des Moines. It's not the best state in America. We've been over this.
No.
Call shenanigans on whatever poll that was.
The internet does come up with some pretty egregious takes at times.
I have seen the internet lie before, yes.
So, yeah. That really the only kind of newsworthy things here in the last week. The other thing I wanted to kind of bring up is I mentioned this in my 3-on-3 piece on Thursday in Zone Coverage. Nobody is really talking about Ryan Suter, and Ryan Suter is having a career year in terms of point production. As we record here on the 18th, Ryan Suter is at 48 points, 6 goals, 42 assists, 1 point shy of his career mark, 43 assists, and 3 shy of his career mark of 51 points.
Yeah.
And why I brought this up was no one talks about it. And as someone who replied to my tweet about the article on Twitter, is he seems to be about the 5th most talked about defenseman on the roster.
Yeah.
And he's number 1 in minutes.
Yeah. Still.
And he's going to break his own franchise record in points by a defenseman.
Right.
And I put this behind in a ranking of other defensemen who are talked about. I put it at number 1, Matt Dumba's turnovers.
Right.
Number 2, Jared Spurgeon, just being so good all the time. 3, there was Nate Prosser. And then 4, why can't Jonas Brodin score?
Yeah.
So quietly, Ryan Suter has put together an incredible season, and when you really reflect on it, you don't really notice him in a hockey game, which I say that as a compliment to him, because he just quietly does his job, and then he is racking up the points on the side, and you really think about it, you don't really recall a play going, man, Ryan Suter really got burned on that play.
Right. I think that's his game.
Yeah.
I think his game is just astonishing consistency. And I have noticed him a few times with some bad defensive plays. I think if you're watching the game with objective eyes, which not a whole lot of folks seem to do, you can see him once in a while have a defensive miscue. It's not often, to your point. It's not often, and I think I have noticed him this year being a little more offensive, too. I have seen him taking more shots other than the infamous wrister from middle of the blue line on the power play. We have seen him taking more shots at even strength. We have seen him, be more aggressive with his passing. He has made some dynamite passes to free people up. But, him not being noticed, that's 100% in his game. And I think that's kind of just a reflection of who he is. I mean, I don't know how in the world Quick Trip thought it was such a great idea to bring in him as a spokesperson, because he might be the one person in Minnesota that's more boring than Joe Mauer. But that's just who he is. He's just a quiet farm boy from Wisconsin. That's who he is.
Yep. Just quietly goes away in the off season, slips into his farm, and doesn't get seen until the next hockey season.
Right.
Just quietly does his job too. There's probably some kind of comparison to be made of he's just so efficient on the back end. It's just like how efficient he is at mowing the lawn in the summer.
Yeah. He's not one to miss a spot.
Yeah, that was just kind of a noteworthy thing because nobody really seems to talk about it. I think there's plenty of other attention grabbers on this team, and Ryan Suter kind of gets lost in there, so it was worth pointing out.
But, and I don't know when we'll get to this, but in the favorite Wild player tournament hosted by Giles and the goalie, he did upset Matt Dumba this past week. I don't know if you wanted to get into that right off the bat or...
Yeah. There's a lot more Dumba haters out there than
I know, and I had a cover. I was with some friends on Friday night, and we started talking about something, and Dumba's name was brought up, and I've got a couple of friends who, for lack of a better term, are K-fan rubes.
Oh God!
And so it kind of opened my eyes a little bit because these guys are big hockey fans, but they don't know hockey that well. Like they watch hockey, they're hockey fans, they're Gopher fans, they're Wild fans, but they haven't really immersed themselves in hockey. They just kind of watch it when it's on. And so I don't know. I mean, sure, you can see Dumba make turnovers on occasion that do kind of frustrate a little bit, but it's the whole confirmation bias thing, and I don't know where this seed was planted exactly. I don't know who it was, but somewhere, somehow, and I'm pretty sure that radio station is to blame, somebody planted a seed that Dumba is bad because he makes a turnover occasionally. And you and I have belabored this to death, and it's like, who led the NHL in turnovers last season? Brent Burns.
Carlson or Brent Burns.
Yeah, and Eric Carlson was second. And it's like, you're going to tell me you don't want those players on your team? Yeah, and so anyway, so there's just something like somehow, some way into the casual hockey fan, it's been implanted into them that Matt Dumba is really bad. And what was extra hilarious, it was the Vegas game we were watching, and then he ends up scoring later in the game, and I just about lost my crap. But it's been implanted in people that Matt Dumba is bad, because once in a while you will see him with an egregious turnover, as you will with a lot of defensemen. If you look for it, if you're looking for turnovers, you're going to find turnovers. If you're looking for, hockey is a game of fast passing. You're going to see some turnovers. And it's just like, it's like looking for turnovers in basketball. If you want to see Jeff Teague commit a turnover, you're going to see Jeff Teague commit turnovers. He's an NBA point guard. They all do. So it's one of those things where I don't know where that narrative came from. Like I said, there's probably a specific radio station that may or may not have something to do with it. But somehow, some way, someone has implanted in many Minnesota fans that Matt Dumba is bad, and they just can't get rid of that notion because they've heard it once.
Yeah. Well, you're probably right. You can't figure out where it came from, but yeah, that's probably where it ended up coming from.
Yeah. On the flip side, I am a little bit happy that there was an upset in our tournament, because I think if that tournament would have gone chalk, it would get kind of, at least in the first round, there would have been a very boring first round had it gone chalk. Matt Cullen made it close thanks to some ballot stuffing in northern Minnesota. But at the end of the day, I think we ended up with, I think we probably do have the 8 most popular players on the Wild. Dumba and Dubnyk can certainly make a case on sneaking their way in. But I thought there was more Suter haters out there. I hear so many negative things about Suter. I guess this season maybe that's just quieted down because he's, as you mentioned, he's having a good year.
Maybe people read my piece on zone coverage and realized he's pretty good. So.
You were the swaying influence on Ryan Suter. You're to blame.
I was disappointed that Charlie Coyle did not upset Zach Parise.
I thought that would be much closer than it was.
Yeah. It was quite a blowout.
It was 70%, I believe.
Not like a UMBC routing Virginia blowout, but
we are all retrievers.
Yeah, so do check that out on our Twitter feed at JTG Wild Podcast. We're getting down to the nitty gritties here.
Yep.
So
this week is the second round. We've got Eric Stahl versus Mikko Koivu. That's a good matchup. We've got Nino Niederreiter versus Zach Parise. That's a fantastic matchup. Jason Zucker and Jared Spurgeon.
That's a close one.
It's a close one for I think Spurgeon is still very underrated for a lot of folks. So I think Zucker's let's say radio station friendships will probably tilt the scales there. And then we've got Granlund and Suter, and that should be a good one. I would see Granlund
try to
pull out
Push
on
that
that.
in
but
Finland.
Yeah, we'll promote that tweet in Finland or Wisconsin and see what happens.
So, yeah.
But yeah, so check that out. That'll drop Monday. We'll be doing those votes throughout the week as the Wild take basically almost an entire week off after their game on Monday night. But look for that Monday through Thursday this week. It should be a good time.
So looking at the week ahead for the Minnesota Wild, they have just a couple of games here, actually. They play Monday night at home against the Los Angeles Kings. And then they have a 4-day break.
Woo!
So they are not back on the ice until Saturday night, March 24th. They play host to the Nashville Predators. As we record here on March 18th, the President's Trophy leading Nashville Predators.
Yeah.
So this will be another good litmus test for the Minnesota Wild as we kind of see where they are compared to the best team in hockey. And Nashville really unbeatable right now. They have won quite a ridiculous stretch of hockey here in the last, really since the trade deadline. And
what's interesting to me is that Pekka Rinne has really come back to the Pekka Rinne that everyone remembers. Because for a couple of seasons there, Pekka Rinne was not good.
he was bad.
He was pretty much bad, like flat out bad for, I want to say, the last 2 or 3 seasons. And then last season, he really got hot in the playoffs there, and he's just kept it up. Maybe he found something. Maybe, I don't know what it was, but I think that's the story that nobody really talks about enough with Nashville, is that Pekka Rinne went from being very, very good for a while on kind of a mediocre team to being kind of bad
On a really
on a good team, and then now he's good on a good team, and we're seeing how that's playing out.
Predators have won 13 out of 14 entering this week. They have games against Buffalo and Toronto before they play the Wild Saturday night.
Those will be tough.
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
So not a task for the faint-hearted. And then on Sunday, the Wild host the Boston Bruins in a rare home back-to-back.
Huh.
So that's what to look forward to this week. You've got 2 teams who are firmly in the playoff picture and 2 really good teams in Nashville and Boston on the weekend. And then you have the Kings who are
fighting
to stay in the playoff race. So
yeah, that's tough.
That is the week ahead. And with that, we will finally get you to our guest, Dane Mizutani.
Dane Mizutani of the St. Paul Pioneer Press, TwinCities.com, joins us here on the Giles and the Goalie podcast. Dane, thanks so much for joining us here. How was the weekend with the Vegas, Arizona trip?
Vegas was a lot of fun. I'll just say that. Everyone knows the allure of Vegas, and it certainly didn't disappoint. But as a whole, I think it was just a really cool thing for the league to kind of see that hockey can kind of survive and thrive in that area. And also just for Wild fans. I mean, I got to say it was pretty close to 50-50 that night for the Wild and Golden Knights fans. Obviously a popular destination to travel for because it's Vegas, but just really impressive to see the amount of fans there. And certainly the sport's thriving, and that's good for the league. And overall, the Wild took home 4 points this weekend. So I think as a whole for the team, really good. For myself, it was really fun. Never going to, turn down a nice West Coast road trip like that.
So a little bit on yourself here, on your TwinCities.com page, your profile lists you as you are from Hawaii and somehow ended up covering the Wild in the state of hockey. No, it doesn't make sense to him either. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. My dad, most of my family's still in Hawaii. My mom's side, my dad's side, they're all there. I didn't grow up there, though. My parents split up when I was 1. My mom ended up settling down in Illinois, and that's kind of where I grew up. But went back to Hawaii every summer. Nice place to visit, obviously. And then, my dad still out there, my mom's family. Pretty much everyone except me and my mom are out there. And I came here for school and just kind of stuck ever since. So I guess born in Hawaii, raised in Illinois, and then kind of made a life out here.
And this is now, I believe it's your second year on the Wild beat. Is that correct, or is that 3? I lost count there.
This is my second year, so just kind of winding down on the second year here.
And it's been quite a ride so far, as the Wild have been probably one of the better regular season teams in your 2 years on the beat, but they haven't found that playoff success. Maybe hopefully that changes this year.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the story basically ever since I've been here. I came here for college, so I've been here for probably 6-7 years now, and it seems like kind of this time of year is always kind of the same old story, at least from my time and my experience in Minnesota. The Wild are good, but I think good enough. And I think last year you saw they were really, really good, and I think that was what got people to think, maybe this is the year, maybe this is the year they finally break through. And then obviously everyone remembers that, first round series with the St. Louis Blues out in 5 games, season over. So I'm not sure what this year has in store, because these guys are really hard to read. It's a Jekyll and Hyde team if I've ever seen one. Can look so good sometimes, and then just absolutely atrocious at other times. So they're coming off, another solid road trip, which is something that couldn't always be said. The Wild really struggled on the road early in the year. But they've had kind of an identity of following up really impressive performances or really impressive stretches with stretches that kind of bring them back down to earth expectation-wise. But right now, beating Vegas in Vegas, no easy thing to do. Vegas has lost 9 times now at home in regulation during the regular season. So, the fact they were able to do that and then follow that up with a big win over the Coyotes, who I know they stink when you look at the standings, but this team has been playing pretty darn good the last month and a half, 2 months or so. So that's not an easy pushover win anymore. Now the key is for the Wild to kind of build on that moving forward. But these last 10, 12 games are going to be huge, because they have to find that niche of being good all the time, because it's not going to work in the playoffs if you're good half the time. So we'll see. These last 10 games are going to be very, very key for them.
Yeah, with these... go ahead.
Dane, what do you contribute the inconsistency to? What's your theory on why this team cannot find a consistent play?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just kind of... I think the buzzword with the Wild ever since I've been here has been kind of a sniper or a lack thereof. They don't necessarily have, I guess you can say Eric Stahl is having an incredible season and has shown the ability to put the puck in the back of the net, and Jason Zucker's really taken the next step. But they don't necessarily have a pure goal scorer, and I think sometimes that can kind of come back to bite them. And then when you look at how the game changes in the playoffs, the Wild, it's no secret, is a speedy team that kind of relies on its speed and skill. And when games tighten up in the playoffs, I think you saw it last year in the St. Louis Blues series, stronger, more physical teams can kind of push them around and wear them down over the course of a 7-game series. Obviously, last year didn't make it that far. So I think that's probably what I would attribute some of it to, at least. But yeah, they're a hard team to figure out, because, like I said, they can look so good sometimes and really so bad other times. So it's a tough one. But I guess at the end of the day, the pieces are in place. You think Bruce Boudreau likes to say, it may be harder than winning the Stanley Cup is getting into the playoffs, just because everyone's so darn good in the league now. A couple more wins, it looks like the Wild will be able to do that, and then kind of test their luck again. So we'll see. But yeah, that's kind of my take. Just, they're not as physical as some teams, and then I think that can sometimes be the difference in the playoff series.
And then now with the 2 wins here over the weekend against Vegas and the Coyotes, the Wild have kind of strengthened their spot in the playoff picture, as they are now 5 points clear of the top wild card spot, and looking more and more like they're going to get a first-round matchup with the Winnipeg Jets, who maybe have a few players who fall under that physical kind of category, with Dustin Byfuglien. He kind of comes to mind. But I guess, one, what would your potential thoughts on a Wild Jets playoff series be? And then two, just from a writer's perspective, it's probably a little bit of a bummed feeling knowing that a few extra points going the opposite way, you guys would probably get a first-round matchup in either Vegas or Nashville.
Yeah. We'll start with the team, and then I'll talk about my personal wants. But I mean, the Wild, like we just talked about, I think it's, like I said, no secret they struggle against bigger teams, stronger teams, teams that can kind of physically impose their will, and that's kind of Winnipeg, is calling card. They're gonna wear teams down, and they have some skill. When I say some skill, a lot of skill on that team now. With Patrick Laine comes to mind, Mark Scheifele if he's fully healthy for the playoffs. Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, like, they're not just this bully of a team anymore, but they have bullies, and they have guys like Bufflin, like you said, even a guy like Jacob Trouba. Big guys on the back end that are going to kind of wear these guys down. And I think I'm looking at it. Maybe Nashville is a tougher matchup because they're playing better than anyone in the league. But for the Wild, I think Winnipeg was maybe the matchup they wanted to avoid if they could in the first round. And it's kind of funny because all year they've been working to be in that top three in the Central, to solidify their spot. And finishing in the top three might get them a date with Winnipeg, who could be their toughest out of the playoffs. So it's no easy task. It's not going to be easy for them. I think that's probably their worst matchup, like I said. But I guess they've had some success too against them at times. And it was just a fun series too. I mean, I know I don't necessarily want to spend 5 days in Winnipeg, but I think people, there's just going to be a lot of energy. Winnipeg comes in, they travel really well, and I think Wild fans will take a 6-7 hour drive up too, and it could make for a really fun, entertaining series on the ice. But we're not going to be able to go play blackjack and roulette right in the basement of the casino in our hotel. So we'll see. There's still a lot of season left. The Wild have to take care of business. They play Dallas twice. If they win those 2 games, I think they're pretty safe. If they lose those 2 games, it could go the other way. They could drop the wild card spot. But they're looking really good now. Like you said, 5 points clear, and it would take a lot at this point for either Colorado or Dallas to jump them.
Yeah, and you said it would take a lot, especially with the Wild having 2 games against Dallas, and maybe there was not as much reason for optimism just a couple of days ago as it was revealed Jared Spurgeon's going to be out at least through the end of the regular season after partially tearing his hamstring and really giving them a big blow on their back end. And when they had Colorado and Dallas kind of breathing down their necks at that point, it was seemingly maybe not as a slam dunk as it is now for the Wild to be in the spot that they are now.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough injury. I mean, you look across the team, and I know there's tons of valuable players just on this Wild team as a whole. But Jared Spurgeon, the things he does, that goal kind of unnoticed. I think he's one of the toughest, people to lose, especially at this point in the season. Just brings this sense of calm to the back end that I think only really Ryan Suter is the other guy on the back end that can bring that. Matt Dumba, I've always been kind of a fan of his game, the way he plays, because he brings so much on the offensive end, but he doesn't have that kind of sense of calm with the puck that you just kind of feel with Spurgeon on the ice. And, I know the Wild got over the Jonas Brodin injury, but it's a little different when they had Suter and Spurgeon to fill the role of Jonas Brodin when he was out for a month, rather than kind of have Suter and then a bunch of patchwork to kind of fill the role of Jared Spurgeon. So, I mean, the first 2 games, they were good out of it. They came out good with 2 wins. But like you said, partially torn hamstring. I mean, there's no guarantee that he's going to be 100% if the Wild are fortunate enough to make the playoffs. If he's going to be 100% enough to play. So, I mean, he thinks he will be, and I think he, obviously he probably does believe that. But hamstrings, I mean, they linger for a long time. So I would be a little nervous for the Wild, or if I was the Wild. But all they can do right now is kind of take care of what's in front of them and and so far they're 2 for 2 in that standpoint. So take nothing away from them, but definitely a tough injury for them right now.
Just a few more questions here for Dane Mizutani, our guest here from the St. Paul Pioneer Press. These are kind of our last three kind of trademark questions we like to ask all our guests here. First of which is, you've obviously been covering the Wild here almost 2 full seasons now. Is there maybe a story from like behind the scenes that you could share? Like, I mean, we had Evan Sporer on. He talked about Ryan Suter feeding him after Yom Kippur. I'm blanking out here, but just maybe something that maybe fans out there don't necessarily get to see from the team.
Nothing's really coming to mind. I know that's going to sound really boring, but I mean, I would say just kind of seeing that these guys are people off the ice, maybe. Some people just assume, obviously they have a job to do and all that, but these guys are humans off the ice, and, Jason Zucker comes to mind, the things he does in the community and things of that nature. Like just seeing from that light that they're more than just kind of athletes. I don't have any, fun, stories, no players feeding me or anything like that. But just kind of seeing the other side of these guys. I know that sounds really boring, but maybe I can come back on and think of something else. But right now, top of my head, on the spot, I got nothing fun for you.
Then another one we have here is, since Ben and I are big hockey jersey fans and critics, do you have a particular hockey jersey that you love above all else? Or if you can't narrow it down like us, do you have like a Mount Rushmore maybe of hockey jerseys?
Just top of my head, I really like Detroit's, always have. Just kind of a clean, sleek look. That never really changed it, and I think that's sometimes the key. You have something, don't mess with it. I don't know, what are yours? I'd be interested to hear.
Well, I am big on the...
You can't go wrong with the North Stars, I guess I'll say, too. I mean, wish those still existed.
The North Stars, definitely. I'm also a huge Mighty Ducks fan, so the early era of the Mighty Ducks jerseys I am very big on. Ben, what about you?
All of the above. I've always liked a lot of the classic, for lack of a better term, original 6 teams. The Blackhawks, that's a great logo, and Montreal is similar to Detroit in that they've never really changed anything, and it's a great look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Just kind of keep it clean and stick to the classics. But like you said, the Ducks, too. I mean, the old school Mighty Ducks, kind of the gaudy uniform shit up. I'm a basketball guy, so I like when the teams kind of do, crazy with their jerseys, and so that's sometimes fun too.
Speaking of hoops, have you been able to keep up with the college tournament this weekend? Even though the Wild have had a few games, it's just kind of watching when I can. It's been absolutely nuts comparative to previous years.
Yeah, I'll say I did not have UMBC making it out of the first round. That kind of messed me up. But I had Arizona in my finals, and that kind of messed me up from the get-go. But I pick Duke to win every year. You can ask any of my friends. When I was a kid, it didn't make me. I was kind of the butt of a lot of jokes because everyone hates Duke, and that's kind of carried on throughout the rest of my life. But I pick them every single year. And, this year they didn't break my heart losing the first or second round. So they look pretty good right now. I'm feeling pretty good. I'd feel a heck of a lot better if Arizona wasn't in my finals with them.
And then the last question here for Dane Mizutani, our guest. This is one that is a little bit off the board. It kind of catches maybe a few of our guests by surprise, and it certainly gets the biggest reaction. But do you consider soup, just soup, to be a meal?
No. I don't. I never just eat soup. I don't know anyone that does just eat soup for a meal.
Oof.
I hope that wasn't the wrong answer.
Well, Ben and I love to debate that, and he'll tell you it's not. I will say it is, and then we'll argue about it.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
I'll agree with that.
Dane, before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to plug?
No, just you can follow me on Twitter, Dane Mizutani. But other than that, I just appreciate you guys having me on. It's fun to do these things, so go on. Feel free to hit me back.
Yeah, no, we will. We'll definitely have you back, and people can, of course, check out your work at the St. Paul Pioneer Press or on TwinCities.com, and then, of course, at your Twitter at Dane Mizutani. So, Dane, thanks so much for joining us here today, and we'll definitely have you back on down the road.
Thanks, Dane.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks to Dane for joining us. Obviously, it was a crazy weekend of travel for him, going to Vegas and Arizona. So we thank him for taking the 20 minutes to join us here.
That was awesome.
We'll gladly have him back again, as it's obviously fun to have him on. So
Yeah, talk to somebody that close to the team.
all right, on to our Bruce Boudreau quote of the week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more, because that, they pay good money for this. If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
All right, Bruce Boudreau quote of the week comes from the head coach when asked about the Minnesota Wild fan support in Vegas on Friday night, which was pretty glaring through the television if you were watching at home. But the Wild seemingly had half the crowd in T-Mobile Arena as their own fans, which is almost incredible when you really think about it. But Boudreau said of the crowd, it was like a rock concert out there. I've never been involved in something where the visiting crowd, there were so many of them. I couldn't believe how many people made this trip. Kudos to them, and thanks for putting us over the top.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is quite something to see. I mean, you have no idea how many fans are actually going, and then you see the crowd go nuts when the Wild score in Vegas, and you see all the pregame parties going on with, even Bruce Boudreau went through a fan party, and some of the beat writers did the same, and I don't know. It was quite something. So I'm slightly bummed I did not make the trip out there, but given it was the first weekend of the college basketball tournament, prices were through the roof, so it was for the better that I skipped this one, and hopefully next year when the Wild go out there twice, you can get Giles and the Goalie podcast on location from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada.
That will definitely be a thing, as next year we probably won't, I won't have a wedding to pay for, so...
Whoa.
Yeah, we won't have a wedding to pay for. That's what I'm saying. So we can afford...
Don't worry, I do the same thing
so
too, where sometimes I say I and there should be a we. And
so I'm not buying your ticket to Vegas next year? You're buying your own? Is that what you're saying then? Yeah. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Yeah, no, we'll definitely have to do that. We'll definitely have to have a viewing party. Maybe we'll hook up with our friend Ken from Simbin Vegas. That would be awesome to meet him and chat with him. And maybe an NHL team will actually let us in their doors for once. That's a possibility as well. We'll see.
Hey.
Anything can happen in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So, no, that was cool.
They seem to be a little more friendly to the internet types.
They do. They do. They kind of...
What a concept.
Yeah. Imagine that.
Did I say that out loud?
No, yeah, you definitely did. Yeah, no, it was good, though. I think that... I said this about Vegas when it was started to get rumored that they were going to get a team. And way back in the Wild Extra days, I wrote an article right off the bat after the first kind of wisp of smoke came up that they were getting a team. I was like, this is awesome, because I know I like going to Vegas, and I know lots of people like going to Vegas, and Vegas is cool, but it's really cool when you have something to do out there. And what better to do out there than to watch a hockey game in a brand new facility, with your favorite team and a team that's actually playing well. So very cool that it worked out as well as it did. I had heard that the Wild crowd there was pretty big, and hopefully we'll get out there next year.
Yeah, hopefully.
Keep an eye out for that schedule. Start planning.
We have never been to Vegas.
Really?
So yeah.
I suppose. Okay.
So hopefully next year we.
I've
can,
been many
make
times and I love it.
and-
She's been many times and she does not really love it so much.
Well, see, like I was when the Vegas Whispers, as you almost have nearly kind of dated this podcast of Wild Extra. It seems so far back to say in the Wild Extra days.
Back then.
But I was kind of like in that area where I was like, okay, I really need to go to Vegas, and then the whispers kind of started to come out, and I was like, okay, like
wait for a
I'm
hockey
gonna
team.
wait to see this, and we'll.
I even looked at going for a different weekend just because the prices weren't so outrageous. But then like I said, this weddings are expensive, so maybe next year.
Man, you're just getting some glares here.
Well, and she knows weddings are expensive. Trust me. We have a spreadsheet that is breaking down the pricing for us, and
I mean,
it's
more
a
of
lot.
It's more of I agree with your glaring at him. That's what I was getting at. It's just sometimes guys put our foot in our mouth.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
I guess right now would not keep the wedding on plan.
Yeah, we've got more important things to spend our money on, like a photographer, for instance.
Do you know of any?
I happen to know one. I do, actually. I do happen to know a photographer, so luckily we have one booked.
All right. Okay, here we go. We're getting off tangent.
Sure.
Weekly wager.
That's your bet, sir.
Ah, yes, the bet.
Okay, what the hell? It makes very little sense to bet when you cannot win.
For the weekly wager, Ben and I wagered last week on the Wild Vegas game. That did not go in Ben's favor. But this week I forgot the ketchup chips, as I remembered that during our Eric Stahl segment here at the beginning of the podcast. So once again, Ben escapes the ketchup chips. So I'm now placing odds in my head on if these will have gone stale by the time I remember to get these to you.
Have we determined how many ketchup chips I have to eat?
No.
I don't think we decided that the whole bag would be, necessary.
No, but I don't know, I guess we can maybe come up with that if I remember to bring the chips one of these days. But
Yeah, I've still to this point forgotten the cranberries, so
yeah, and
we're kind of missing out on that. Roz already threw them away.
Roz doing me a solid by not making me eat those after they're well past their expiration, so she's nice like that.
Set to buy another can of them for 89 cents.
Yeah, I mean I'll just give you $1 to replace them, and you don't have to give me the change. So for this week, since it's kind of a short week and we're not sure if we're going to record before or after the Wild Bruins game, we thought about maybe doing a wager on how many games the Wild win this week, but instead I think we're just going to wager on the Wild Preds game, as the Minnesota Wild have won 2 out of 3 games against the Nashville Predators this season. The Central and President's Trophy leading Nashville Predators. With 104 points, they have now surpassed the Tampa Bay Lightning for top spot in the league. Winners of 13 of their last 14 hockey games coming into this week, as they have a pair of games before they play the Wild on Saturday night at XL Energy Center. But Ben, how do you want to wager on this one?
Well, I'll take the best team in hockey, if that's all right with you. I know you cited that the Wild have had the Preds number a little bit this season, but yeah, they're definitely the hot hand, and unlike FSN, I really don't care how good the Wild are at home.
Okay, well, the Wild are at home, so I'm going to play the home-er card and say the Wild do win. They get 3 out of 4 against the Preds this year, which makes no sense as the season has gone. So then it'll all be irrelevant anyway, because the Wild are going to get matched up against the Winnipeg Jets in round 1 of the playoffs, probably.
Right.
So, whatever. So,
yeah.
And I believe we are going to wager a drink at either the next recording we do in Unnamed Bar and Grill, or just at our Tin Whiskers viewing party. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. So there you have it. There's this week's wager. I think Ben is still winning the season series. I think you're up like 10-9 now. And then we have the almighty wager inching ever so closer to its finale.
I'm not going to say I'm getting worried, but it's a lot less of a lock than it was probably 2-3 weeks ago.
Derrick Rose, baby. Derrick Rose.
Oh, can't figure out why the team isn't any good when he plays. I don't know how that works.
I am so sorry, Wolves fans. I'm just so sorry.
Oh my God.
So when are you waiting for the Wolves season to end to make me eat the slaw? Or are you going to do it right after they clinch the playoff spot?
Well, those two things will probably be pretty close to each other, I got to think. I don't think they'll have it wrapped up that early.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's going to be like a 1 week difference between the two, so I don't know. Well, we'll see.
Okay.
Well, whenever we have the opportunity to. I mean, if we're recording, we might be recording. Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see where we're at. We'll see next time we're at Unnamed Bar and Grill.
All right. So there you go. There is your weekly wager. Last but not least, on to jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
Jersey of the week, or third jersey du jour of the week, is the Los Angeles Kings. I'm just trying to imagine what a third jersey would be like, and just from a hockey jersey aficionado standpoint, the LA Kings have some of the better throwbacks in the history of the NHL, so I would certainly hope that they do just that here with their third jersey, but I don't really get what I want with jerseys, so...
Yeah, I would like to see them tap into their history a little bit. They tapped into their history a little bit when they went to the purple jerseys, and that wasn't necessarily a great idea. But to maybe do a modernized or straight replica version of the Forum Blues, maybe do the Forum Blue jerseys with just the crown in black and silver. That could be a good look as well if they do it right. Anything harkening back to the Gretzky era jerseys, I think would be a good move too. So I'm up for all of that. I think that there's a lot to work with there. I think that they've got a really good set right now. We talked about this on the Lost portion of the podcast, where we really like where LA is at, and I think that they have a lot of options for what they want to do with the third jersey.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much what you will probably get from the LA Kings. And they'll probably look good no matter which way they'll go, but
right.
there's like a 1.6% chance that could go against them. So
yeah, they could end up wearing white breezers again.
Oh God, let's not talk about those. I don't remember if this was this last week or maybe it was the week before, but somebody asked Russo when the Wild were getting new whites, and he said, "Why would they do that? That's one of their best jerseys." And then somebody asked him again, "What what does he think are the best jerseys in Wild history, and he said the white jerseys they have now and the green alternates they had from 2009 to last year, which is a very accurate take. So
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Michael Russo, Minnesota Wild insider, elite level jersey takes as well.
Is there anything he can't do?
I don't know.
Get us in the press box.
We'll see about that. All right, that could probably wrap it up for us. Thank you to Jamie and Roz for sitting in with us during this otherwise fine podcast, and they did get breakfast out of it, so
right.
Always a good time, and I think we're learning that in the off season there will be some podcasts with them fully featured on it, because I don't know, we run out of things to talk about, so
sometimes
they can come on in and add some fire to the podcast. So yeah, that'll do it for us. You can find Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. We write for a website called ZoneCoverage.com. It used to be called Cold Omaha, but now it is ZoneCoverage.com. You can find that on Twitter at ZoneCoverageMN. You can find our podcast on Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast, and you can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/GATG Wild Podcast. And you can find this otherwise fine production on SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Stitcher, and Zone Coverage. So that will wrap it up for us this week, and we will talk to you again next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.